Good morning. I'm Michelle Grzoulis, and I'm president of the foundations at Rochester Regional Health. Happy to be with all of you this morning, and very happy to be joined by Rhiannon Candello, who is a registered dietitian, as well as someone who holds their RN and a recent BSN graduate, and works in the bariatrics department at Rochester Regional Health. Rhi, happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is a really interesting topic. I actually am really excited I'm always excited to be talking about the stuff we talk about, but lots of questions today from me, so we're going to be busy. As always, if any of you watching have questions, please send them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them. So let's just jump right in and get started. I know your job is helping patients understand how to change their diets and prepare for healthy eating. Talk about healthy dieting as a whole, and how do you start that conversation?
So first, if anybody tells you there's one diet that's the be-all end-all, they're trying to sell you something. Honestly, but like if they are taking time to assess what your likes are, how active you are, what's your lifestyle like, what's your budget, then they can actually get a feel for you and make recommendations. Nobody should be making recommendations right off the bat.
So part of it is getting to know what someone's goals are, clearly if someone is struggling with a health issue, there's things that you're going to direct them to do to remedy that. But in general, what I just heard you say is it's really about understanding what you're trying to do personally. So what are the best regimens in general, for folks that you tell them about healthy eating and dieting?
So really it's about balance. That's what I always educate on. What can you do for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Not what can you do for the next 12 weeks, the next month, the next, so on and so forth. You want to think about what you're going to actually be doing forever. So that is what we try to do. We talk about eating true food, not something in a box or something that's processed that you have to buy.
Define true food.
So like anything you can buy at the grocery store. We're talking meat, vegetables, grains, everything.
So something that's not processed.
Yep. Not necessarily something that you have to buy through a program to get to your goal.
Okay. So food that you buy, that you prepare.
Yep.
As opposed to buying a prepackaged.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about sort of prepackaged diets, there's the national brands that are out there, but what you're saying is people can create sustainable changes if they learn how to cook with true foods?
Yes.
Okay. So that leads us to a conversation around the positive and negatives of some of the diets that are out there. And this is one that I'm very familiar with because a couple people in my office have done this and had tremendous results. But I wonder about the long-term sustainability, and that's the keto diet. So talk a little bit about that.
So the keto diet, there's nothing to say that it's wrong or the worst thing in the world. It does depend on what you're doing with it. So you've got to think about what type of fats are you eating? Are you eating unlimited butter and bacon? Is that truly going to get you to the goal that you want to meet? Also, there's certain other things to consider. Can you do it for the rest of your life? If it's something that you think that over time you're going to fall off of, it might not be the best option.
And am I correct in what I've read about the keto diet that diet in particular, because of the focus on so much saturated fat and lots of fats and proteins, is intended to create weight loss, change the way your body processes food, but it's really not something you could do forever?
So for a majority of people, it is not something that they can keep up forever. You have to stay under 30 grams of carbs per day. That includes from vegetables, grains, everything.
That's tough.
If you're doing a true keto diet, it's very difficult to sustain that. And the question always is what are you going to do after? So are you doing keto for a time to jumpstart weight loss, and then what's your next step? Or are you going to try to do this forever? And that beautiful rapid weight loss that you see with the keto diet is what gets people so enticed. And it's water loss. That's what we try to make people understand.
Oh, interesting.
That you're not necessarily losing fat.
Yeah.
The first thing that you're using are actually glycogen stores, which are stored in your muscle.
Okay.
So you use those for energy first, and all that water, because glycogen is carbs, and it holds water. So as you use up those stores, you flush that water out. That's that rapid 10 pounds within maybe 2 weeks that, really excites people. But then after that, they usually think that it's no longer working.
It's so hard to know because there's so much conflicting information out there about the balance of carbs and proteins and how to have the right balance of those to create, to balance your weight and to lose it. It's so hard to make sense of it, which leads me to the other sorts of diets I want to talk about, which is plant-based diets. So when you say plant-based diet to me, what does that actually mean?
So to each person, it's completely different. In my mind, a plant-based diet is a majority of plant-based foods.
Okay.
That does not necessarily mean a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So you could be incorporating more plant-based meals and things like just more lettuce and greens and vegetables and making your meals more around that, which could be wonderful. That could be a wonderful, healthy lifestyle. That doesn't, like I said, doesn't mean you're vegetarian or vegan.
Yeah, it's just what you choose to eat for lots of reasons. We talked a little bit about environmental stuff, which we'll get to in a second. The carnivore diet, or I don't know if it's actually called a diet per se, but we all know carnivore means meat. So that's a diet heavily based in eating meat-based
Just
proteins?
meat. From what?
Just meat?
It's a new fad that I recently have been seeing on social
Wow,
media.
seriously?
And it's just meat. So that, raises questions in my mind. Okay, what about fiber? Are you okay having bowel movements? Are you constipated? What's the long-term effect? I mean, we already know that fiber lowers colon cancer risk.
Yeah.
So what is that going to look like long-term?
So yesterday, in preparation for this, Ree sent out this thing to read that compared the Impossible Burger, the Beyond Burger, and then a 90-10 burger, which is 90% lean beef, 10% fat. And I know we were laughing before we went on air. I died when I read it because I assumed that the two plant-based items would be better for you. But tell everybody what's really true about that.
So there's certain things to consider. Plant-based burgers actually have more vitamins. They are fortified with a lot of vitamins, which could be a wonderful, beneficial thing. But they tend to be higher in sodium. And as we compared them, we found that for the same 4-ounce portion size, there was actually more fat and more saturated fat than in the actual beef burger. So these are things to think about, as well as if somebody's looking for a low-calorie option, that's typically why they're going for this plant-based or something like that. And they're not necessarily any less calories. Across the board, there's about a 10-calorie difference, which isn't significant.
And the sodium content difference was also what really shocked me. I mean, it was, in some cases, 4 or 5 times the amount of sodium in the 4-ounce portion of a 90-10 burger.
Right.
So, but we also talked about, too, that there are reasons to consider eating less meat from an environmental perspective. So I'm doing my part from a sustainability perspective. We all reduce our footprint in eating less beef. But in terms of comparing the dietary component of it, it was really shocking to me. So the moral to the story there for me was read the labels like we're often told.
Definitely.
So when someone's trying to figure out balance, notwithstanding the concerns about the environment and other ethical issues that you might have for choosing to be a vegetarian or a vegan,
Absolutely.
What's the advice that you give people about, and it's probably going to be what we've always heard, which is balance. What's the advice you give someone about how to make the right choice for them?
So you have look at what their goals are, what they find ethically syncs with them. So if they would like to be vegan, we need to find balance within the vegan diet to make sure they're hitting their proteins, they're getting the good healthy fats, they have enough energy to do whatever they're doing, depending on what exercise or what their lifestyle looks like. So that's going to really depend on whether this person wants to do a plant-based diet or go vegan because of ethical issues and they feel that that's right for them, or if they're looking for some way to lose weight, because then that might be a different conversation.
So I want to digress before we come back to talking about some other ways to learn to eat healthy and talk about your role as part of the bariatric practice. So I know you're typically helping patients who are preparing for or have just had bariatric surgery. So for folks that are listening who aren't in that category, where can they go to learn and have conversations like the one you and I are having about what's best for you? Can you just reach out to a dietitian to get information?
Actually, you can. So there's a lot of community dietitians.
Okay.
And even if you just Google Rochester Community Dietitians, you will find them. Now, that being said, see look into their credentials. Actually make sure you're talking to somebody who's accredited. There are people who claim that they're nutritionists and things like that, and they may just be like self-titling themselves. You want somebody who's truly an RDN or has a master's in nutrition or even a doctorate in nutrition to help you.
Is there an accrediting board for dietitians?
There is.
What's it called? Do you know?
The CDR.
Okay.
I'm not actually
That's
sure.
okay. That's enough for people
Commission
to
of
know.
Dietetics Registration.
There we
That's
go.
it.
There we go. Okay, and that's important because I've had people say I'm a nutritionist, and I don't know that I would have questioned, is that really a dietitian or not?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I want to pause for a moment and see if Phil has got any questions in.
What are some common foods people think are healthy that aren't actually healthy?
Good question.
That is a good question. So I wouldn't say that there are, so I don't want to classify foods as good foods versus bad foods, because that can really like get into people's head and they're like, I'm going to stay away from this food because it's a bad food. You can work in all foods and have that balance. So if you want to have,
Ice cream
ice cream, you can absolutely balance that in.
and chocolate.
Absolutely.
Chocolate's good for you. It's a superfood, as I've been told repeatedly. So let's talk about meal service options. There's no shortage of opportunities for people to take advantage of things like HelloFresh or Blue Apron, and you mentioned, I wrote it down, misfit markets. What's your perspective on whether or not those are, I know they're expensive because I've actually looked into them before as well, but what's your perspective on them from a nutritional standpoint?
They're beautiful. As most of these, they give you options. You can, if you're more of a plant-based person, they have those options, lower calorie, and it'll tell you, these meals are so many calories, and you can pick like your calorie grade, things like that, or whatever it is. Maybe you want to eat more vegetables or eat more chicken, things like that. They have those options, and it's really cool actually. The drawback is the price.
Yeah, it's expensive.
For about 3 meals, I was looking at, it was $60 a week.
Yeah, it's
for
expensive.
3 meals.
So it's hard, and I've always said, eating healthy is expensive. It's not the least, which is unfortunate,
Absolutely.
because that's the sort of foundational. And I always think of families trying to feed lots of kids and young mouths. It's hard and it's expensive.
And dietitians can help you with that.
Yeah.
We can go to the market with you and explain like how you can buy healthy foods and save money. So we'll look at products together, and instead of going for maybe the fresh vegetables that could go bad, that could be wasted, you go for the frozen. Absolutely.
Still get the nutrients.
Yes, and they're actually flash frozen at peak nutrient levels, so in theory, they're
It's
actually better.
Yeah.
And that saves you some money.
I always think being a dietitian is such a life skill. Like, to have that knowledge, you can do so much to take care of yourself just intuitively. I know there's also lots of technology options to help people manage their calorie intake. And I didn't ask this up front, but let's go there first, actually. What are your thoughts about counting calories? Do you think that's an effective way to manage weight?
I love counting calories. So a majority of like the fad diets, the reason they work is they put people in a calorie deficit. That is how they work. Over time, with across the board, that is how they work. When that calorie deficit is no longer a calorie deficit for that person, that is when they plateau. The magic bullet that everybody is looking for is a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
The problem is to make that sustainable, it takes time. Nobody's patient enough.
Yeah. What's the rule too? It takes how many days or weeks of a calorie deficit to actually lose a pound? Isn't there a formula?
So there is. So it's 3,000 calories deficit per week will give you a pound of weight loss.
So 3,000 calories of deficit a week. So reducing your caloric intake by 3,000 calories a week will equate to 1 pound of weight loss. But the calories that I need each day to lose weight is different than what you need.
Absolutely.
Which also is why this is so confusing.
And that's
I
why
think.
it gets hard.
Clearly,
Absolutely.
I've thought about it before. So do you recommend that, so given that you feel strongly that calorie sort of management is helpful, are there apps that you direct people to help manage that?
Absolutely.
So what are they? Let's talk about that.
So it depends on what your goals are. And personally, I like free apps. Who doesn't? So MyFitnessPal is a great one.
I use that one.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's so cool. It has recipes on there. There's a recipe creator, so if you make your own recipes, you can put it in, how many people it'll serve, and it'll give you the whole nutrition breakdown for it. and you can scan the barcodes. Another one is Baratastic, which is actually made for bariatrics, but anybody can use it. It's also free.
Say it again.
Baratastic. So it's
Baratastic, okay.
Baritastic.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But it has more bariatric style recipes, which is fine. They tend to be very healthy, balanced recipes. So perfect.
Are they dense in some particular area, bariatric recipes? You know how insulin recipes or diabetic recipes are reduced
Lower
sugar?
carb.
Yeah, lower in carbs. Anything about bariatric recipes?
Higher in protein.
Higher in protein. Okay, that's
Yep,
helpful.
Good question.
Thank you very much. So busy people, we're all busy, and it's hard to plan. I know when my kids were young, the idea of going home at night after work and planning a healthy meal was so stressful. It was the one thing I always wish I could have paid someone to do. What's the advice that you give really busy people about how to do your best to maintain a healthy diet?
Plan ahead of time. That's the big thing, which obviously we all know.
Yeah.
But like using the crock pot, setting it so that you
Yeah.
have something waiting for you so you're not tempted to go out and grab that pizza. Using the apps, you can actually plan your week, literally make a meal plan for yourself. Think, what do I want for dinner on Friday? And that can absolutely work. And then meal prepping for your day. So whatever that looks like for you. If you like to meal prep once a week, and I'm not a person who likes to be chained to the stove. So you can take a big Pyrex, take aluminum foil, put all your meats in each of the pouches, and put different seasonings so you're not stuck eating the same chicken every
All the
day
time.
for the next week.
Because that's hard. When you're dieting, it gets boring, and that's why
Absolutely.
people stop dieting, right?
Absolutely.
At least that's my own experience. I want to ask you how you ended up here. Like, what led you to this work? Because I know we were talking before we went live. As I said when I introduced Reese, she is an RN, and recently in the last 2 months graduated with her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and is a registered dietitian. So tell us about your path.
So all throughout high school, I was actually obese. So that was what got me into dietetics, because I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. I wasn't happy, and I was a binge eater. I was an emotional eater. So that was like my main trigger.
Yeah.
So once I started figuring that out, and actually exercise was a beautiful outlet for me, I wanted to help other people.
Yeah.
That's really what got me into it. I was like, I feel so much better. How do I go and help others? I want to help people who are in my place and give them whatever body, whatever life that they choose.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I think it's the hardest thing in the world to get comfortable in the skin that you're in and the body shape. We're all different. Our bodies are all different. And learning to
Absolutely.
embrace that is such a big part of it. There's something we didn't talk about that you just mentioned, and that's exercise. So clearly, part of a healthy diet is exercise. So I'm sure you coach people on how to think about that and integrate that into their diet.
Absolutely. And that's something else that you need to think about as far as what are they willing to do? Do I expect all my patients to go out and run marathons and lift weights? No. I expect them to find something that they like so they actually continue to do it till the end of their days.
Yeah. Really helpful information. So I'm going to summarize. Let's see if I got everything. First and foremost, what I'm walking away understanding is talking to a dietitian if you really need guidance or want guidance on what diet works best, what can fit with your lifestyle is the best place to start.
Absolutely.
And some of that may also start with talking to your general practitioner, who might say talking to a dietitian could be a really helpful thing. And it sounds like the other thing we have to do is be realistic about what's attainable
Absolutely.
and what we can sustain, and create something that's sustainable for ourselves, right?
And health on each person is going to look very different. So that's
Did I miss
something
anything that we should talk about?
No, that was beautiful.
Good. Let me check with Phil, see if we have any questions.
She's bodybuilding right now, so.
You're bodybuilding right now?
I am.
Oh, I didn't know that. Say more.
So I actually did my first competition 2 years ago, and I loved it.
Did you?
I just loved it.
Fascinating.
I was addicted to it. And there's actually a big stigma almost for the cut that is required for bodybuilding, that you have to do crazy amounts of cardio, you have to eat no calories, and that's completely false. The beauty of bodybuilding is it gives you that next goal, and throughout your life, in your off season, which we like to call improvement season, so you're actually putting on muscle, you want to maintain a healthy body weight, because the weight that you get for that cut is unsustainable. It's not a healthy body weight. But if you do it gently over time, and we use different tools and techniques to work with our hormones so that you don't wind up plateauing or binging because you're so hungry, that can it can be inspiring.
It's really exciting.
It really is.
When's your next competition?
2021. I haven't started.
Okay.
I'm prepping for it, but my season isn't set yet.
Okay, well, we will cheer you on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with me. It's great to meet you. Thank you all of the audience for joining. We hope you learned something today. And if you have additional questions, send them in and we will get you answers. Rhiannon, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice
Thanks for
to
joining
meet
us.
you.
Thanks for the work you do. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.